In this episode of Travelogue, we explore the city of Xuancheng in eastern China. We get up close with a sharp-toothed reptile, taste some extremely potent Chinese wine, and explore the mountain that has enchanted Chinese scholars throughout the ages.
Hi and welcome to Travelogue. I'm Katrina Yu and right now we're riding on Puppetry. We just came from Beijing and are on our way to Xuanzhou and Anhui. Now one of the reasons I love riding the bullet train here in China is that you get to look out the window and really observe this changing landscape. And right now we're in the middle of a bit of a seasonal transition, so we're heading from the cooler north down to the warmer south.
China's bullet trains travel at just over 300 kilometers an hour. Thanks to a new high-speed rail line, we're able to get from Beijing to Southern Anhui in about 4 hours. Xuancheng is located in Anhui's southeast, neighboring the cities of Nanjing and Hangzhou. The city is considered an inland gateway between China's east coast and the central regions. It lies within what's known as the Jiangnan region, Jiangnan meaning south of the Yangtze. It's a part of the country that is known for its beautiful scenery and its rich artistic and cultural heritage. The pace of life in Xuancheng is slow, and people often indulge in traditional and scholarly pursuits. Early morning Tai Chi is just one popular communal activity. And this calm and reflection isn't just confined to the morning. You can feel it in the city's atmosphere throughout the day.
So we're here in Xuanzhou, which is the main city area of Xuancheng, and compared to other Chinese cities, it's quite small. Just under 1 million people live here, and you really get that sense walking down the street this morning. It's the busiest time of the day, yet it's quite comfortable and still quite calm.
It's a sharp contrast to the frenetic pace in some of China's bigger cities. I wonder if this relaxed attitude is due in part to the subtropical climate. And as our next destination shows us, it's not just the people of Xuancheng who enjoy this slow pace. It's also the creatures, specifically the local alligators. And the best place to see them is at the Yangtze Alligator National Nature Reserve, one of Xuancheng's most popular attractions.
If you look behind me, there's definitely no shortage of scaly creatures here. This, in fact, is the nation's biggest reserve for the preservation and breeding of the Yangtze alligator. And that's because the alligator is one of the 10 most endangered species here in China.
They're known as living fossils because their ancestors were around at the same time as the dinosaurs. These alligators once lived all along the Yangtze River, but due to the expansion of agriculture and hunting, since the 1970s, the species has only been found in Southern Anhui. The region's warm and humid climate, as well as its expansive wetlands, provides an ideal habitat for the reptiles. This reserve is a great place to observe the Yangtze alligator up close. Really up close.
You know when you find yourself in certain moments that you never foresaw in your life? This is definitely one of those moments for me. This is a little baby Yangtze alligator. 它多大了？
3岁。这手拿到这里。
谢谢。
尾巴拉开一点。
He looks so docile. Gosh. This is one prepared earlier, evidently. A fully grown adult Yangtze alligator. seems to be making an awful lot of noise at the moment. Well, one day you're going to grow up to be that. But for now, I'm glad that he's this size because there's no way I could get close or even quite intimate with an alligator otherwise.
It's probably best not to outstay my welcome. So I go to meet Xia Tongsheng, who takes me to see the expansive grounds of the reserve. Although thousands of alligators have been artificially bred in the reserve, Mr. Xia tells me that there are still wild alligators to be found here too. In fact, the alligators successfully reproduced in the reserve are descendants of wild ones sourced from the same wetlands.
还有那个野生鳄鱼就在这儿吗？
我们自然的野生鳄鱼，野外还有。我们这地方是这地方一部分的鳄鱼，就是等于是我们这里的15000条人工繁殖鳄鱼的祖宗。当时有340多条。
340条。
这部分鳄鱼现在已经过了繁育年龄，已经不繁育了。我们是从其他地方迁移过来的，迁到这个地方来保护起来。我们保护区总共是18000平方公顷。那里面的还有150条野生鳄鱼。
But the Yangtze alligators aren't the only unique Xuancheng treasure we get to see today. We head away from the water and deep into the countryside, where villagers are getting ready for something called a huaguxi, a flower drum opera performance.
I love the atmosphere backstage of any performance, but it's also kind of more special when we're here in the countryside. This whole presence of this company creates this really fair-like atmosphere, and right now they're getting ready for a very special traditional huaguxi, a very traditional local opera performance.
因为呢，我是79年下半年我就成立了一个花鼓戏剧团，因为花鼓戏现在国家剧团解散了，就是唯一个宣城市千年花鼓戏剧团在点到，因为我年龄大了嘛，儿子出来顶替，在孙子他也出来，一年在外面呢有10个月，场次呢也有500多场的，也有最少不低于450场。
Soon it's curtain time, and the handful of people I saw coming in has suddenly multiplied into hundreds. A keen audience, with some bringing their own seating for the special event.
贵人都是命，我命呐不如人，命善善变子，都是女才成。
Southern Anhui Huaguxi is part of China's intangible cultural heritage. Performances are rare. In fact, this is the last remaining troupe that specializes in Southern Anhui Huaguxi opera.
你们可是天上来，真是。哎呦，我打了一国又一国，哪有穷鬼呀？
It's amazing to think of the sacrifices these performers make, traveling for much of the year and living in such basic conditions. Payment is modest and privacy almost non-existent. I wonder if it's pure passion for the ancient art form that drives them. Whatever it is, these adoring faces must have something to do with it. It's certainly difficult to put a price tag on this kind of admiration and appreciation. Coming up on Travelogue, we meet a man who has used his love for puppetry to begin a fascinating business and stumble across a surprising sacred sanctuary. In this episode of Travelogue, we explore the city of Xuancheng in eastern China. We get up close with a sharp-toothed reptile, taste some extremely potent Chinese wine, and explore the mountain that has enchanted Chinese scholars throughout the ages. The next day, we head to Xuanzhou's southeast to see a very special ancient town.
Well, this is Shuidong, one of the most important cultural towns here in China. It's more than 1,000 years old, and although it looks pretty quiet at the moment, during the Ming and Qing dynasties, this place was booming with trade. Merchants from all over China would come here to trade in different resources, specifically the candied date. That is very famous in this area, and it's the reason why this town is called the most sweet ancient town in China.
Whereas many ancient towns in China have been redeveloped beyond recognition, Shuidong retains its authentic character. Families have lived here for generations, and many locals have inherited the trade practiced by their ancestors, going back centuries, such as comb making. And the wood they're made from? The same tree which made Shuidong famous, the tree of the candied date.
Now this is what Shuidong is best known for, these candied dates. Now the dates themselves are grown in the local mountain range, and today they're prepared in many different ways. But my favorite and the most traditional way it's prepared is in these two jars here. Now merchants have been trading these sweet treats for hundreds of years, and the reason, well, to find out the reason for that, you'll just have to taste it. Or if you can't, I can taste it for you. Now look at this. Preserved and covered in sugar, and tasty and sweet, but not too sweet. An ideal street salad, I think.
Shuidong is a town on water, and many who came here in the past would have done so via this small dock. Today, it's a charming and quiet spot to wash clothes or vegetables. But during the Ming and Qing dynasties, it was the grand entrance to a bustling commercial center. And traces of that time can still be found today.
Well, this may look like just another old home, but actually it's one of the most important old structures here in Shuidong. It was once a hotel called Sicaihe, and all the merchants who would come to this town would stay here, and at its peak it accommodated about 200 different people.
But of course, there's much more to the Shuidong story than its buildings. Strolling down the town's main street, I come across this museum, tea and guest house. Much of it is devoted to traditional Southern Anhui shadow puppetry. The craft can be traced back to the early Qing dynasty. Southern Anhui shadow plays have been bringing traditional stories alive for 400 years. For He, this museum, and the vast collection of puppets in it, represents a lifetime of work, as well as a family legacy. He founded this establishment in 2010 as a way of sharing his passion for shadow plays while catering to tourists.
这个就是皮影戏的脸谱，这是一个武将的脸谱，在过去演戏当中，他是演丑霸王的。我现在呢，就是说画一个样，我要把这个丑霸王的皮儿给它刻下来。
现在很少，我现在有那么多的青年人做这个吗？
现在一般的会做的都是老艺人，现在年轻人嘛，他做这个都做不下来了，因为做这个需要很长时间的耐力。你做一个皮儿吧，复杂的要4、5天才能做一个，再简单的都要1天多时间才能完成一个。
Mr. He treats me to a lesson in the ancient art, something I consider an honor since he's a true master. Shadow play puppetry has been in his family for 9 generations.
这个键杆是控制他的身体。
好。
这2个呢是控制他的2个胳膊。
Okay, so just to control the body, 2 hands.
你看，首先人物要走路，你看，走到那边，可以走到那边去。
It's actually really hard to maneuver.
然后走到头了可以转身。
好。
弯腰。还有低头。害羞。
So this is how she looked shy.
这2人走在一起了就拥抱。
Oh, okay, we're gonna hug now. Fight.
打架。在跳舞。
跳舞 to dance. Woohoo! Gee, these puppets are super flexible, aren't they? And just playing with them and maneuvering their arms, which is sometimes getting stuck, makes me realize that they need to be made out of some really hardy kind of material. Otherwise, after 1 or 2 performances, they'll break. So they really are specially crafted. Well, my performance may not be so graceful, but when worked by experts, there's something captivating about watching these puppets move from behind the screen. It's easy to see why shadow puppetry is said to be a predecessor of films.
非常棒。演得非常好。
谢谢老师。Bravo.
非常棒。
And that's the end of the show. As I continue my exploration of Shuidong, I stumble across a completely unexpected sight. A Catholic church. Built over 140 years ago, the church is among only a handful in the region. It was designed along European Gothic lines while incorporating some distinctly Anhui architectural features. It's empty now, but I'm told that it's a regular hive of sacred activity, not only for those who live in Shuidong, but for the entire region. Now, this cathedral is not so dissimilar from many others in Europe because it was actually originally built in the 1870s by some French priests, and today it's maintained by a devoted group of local Catholics, and they come here regularly for prayers and Mass. But during special occasions like Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, this church floods with up to 30 to 40,000 people from all over the region. You see, this is the second biggest cathedral in all of East China. Catholic missionaries were active in Anhui, Zhejiang, and Jiangsu during the 19th century, which makes sense considering the proximity to the coast. More than a century later, the property, inside and out, is still lovingly cared for. The garden is delightful to stroll through, a true sanctuary for anyone who comes, regardless of faith. Up next on Travelogue, we learn about the spirit of this ancient city, first by getting a taste of it, literally, and then by exploring the mountain which has enchanted Chinese poets for centuries. With morning, we return to Xuancheng city center to visit one of its most iconic landmarks, Xieqiao Tower. Located in downtown Xuancheng, it was first built during the 5th century by a man called, you guessed it, Xieqiao. Xieqiao was a famous poet and administrator who was a loyal servant of the emperor. And he's not the only scholar associated with the tower. Renowned Tang Dynasty poet Li Bai sang its praises in verse. And today, the tower continues to draw poets. This is because poetry is considered part of the spirit of Xuancheng. And Li Bai's other great love, the local wine, Xuan wine, is considered equally important to the identity of the city. I couldn't resist finding out more about Xuan wine, for cultural reasons. So I headed to the factory where it's made. To my surprise, it looks more like a football stadium than a factory. Well, except for these massive pits, of course.
这就是我们江南最大的这个小窖酿造这个崔健，这个呢这个窖池啊就8个年房。
多少时间？
它就是发酵期大概是50天样子。
可以香的。
对对，木态发酵，对。
Even at just this fermenting stage, you can already smell that baijiu.
Baijiu is a traditional Chinese liquor. It's one of the world's 6 variations of distilled spirits. Whiskey, vodka, gin, brandy and rum being the others. Xuanzhou, the local baijiu, is made from a mixture of different grains including sorghum, rice and barley. Baijiu has a high concentration of alcohol, higher than the equivalent Korean soju or Japanese shochu, which usually have 20 to 40% alcohol content. Today I'm getting to sample a particularly potent glass.
这是云酿酒啊，只有在我们这个生产现场才能喝到，在任何地方喝不到这个酒，请品尝一下。
Wow.
65度。
Wow. So this is not only the purest form of baijiu I've ever had, it's also the strongest because as it comes out of this tube, nothing else has been added to it. So whereas a normal baijiu has 40% alcohol, this one has 60 to 70%. Now, goes down very well. 挺好喝。
It's not hard to see how all those famous poets might have loved and been inspired by the local tipple. But their primary muse was much grander. It was a mountain. Located in the northern suburbs of the city, Mount Jingting is arguably the most famous attraction in Xuancheng. Not only does Mount Jingting feature frequently in Chinese poetry and art, it's also culturally important. The temples built on its slopes signify the importance of Buddhism in the history of this area.
Now, Xuancheng was actually one of the first regions in China to receive Buddhism, and where I'm standing is testament to that. Now, it may not look like much, but this is actually the ruins of an ancient Tang temple. If you look behind me, you'll see these twin imposing structures here. Now, they're very well preserved. You can see the detailing, and you can even see the color. Now, it's so rare for buildings from that time to be so well kept, and it's quite a cultural treasure here in Xuancheng.
No historical figure loved Jingting as much as Tang Dynasty icon Li Bai. He came here 7 times during his lifetime and wrote many celebrated poems about its picturesque peaks. Li Bai considered it a majestic retreat from the politics of court life and once famously said that Mount Jingting was the only thing a person could never bore of. Li Bai certainly knew how to entertain himself. He often wrote about parties in the company of friends and generous amounts of wine. And he wasn't the only poet enamored by the mountain. More than 1,000 poems have been written about Jingting through the ages, and many more continue to be written about it today.
Now, Jingting Mountain is actually revered as China's mountain of poetry. And this is because through the ages, many iconic and famous poets came to this place seeking solitude and inspiration. And today in China, if you're a self-respecting poet, you will definitely make at least one trip here in your lifetime. So Jingting Mountain really does continue to have that elite literary status.
But of course, it's not only the literati who are drawn to Jingting today. It was designated a national forest park in 1996 and opened to the public in 2008. Today, people living in Xuancheng and the surrounding areas visit the mountain to enjoy spectacular views of the city.
Now, when you come to the mountain, it's only natural that you're going to get a bit thirsty, and so did they in ancient times. And luckily, they had the spring to help them on that account. So that is why, ta-da, I've got my own handy bucket and rope. Now, when's the last time you got water this way? I bet a very long time ago, if you ever did. Now, I'm just going to put it down in here. Get the spring water. It's still clean and very fresh as it ever was. So people coming here today, those who live at the foot of the mountain and those who work in this temple back here, still use it as their source of water. And it's actually a very deep hole. When we were young, we used to think that from the west, if we dug a hole deep enough, we'd get to China. Perhaps if you fell in here, you'd end up somewhere in Europe. Just kidding. Okay, I think I've hit the water. Oh, it's quite heavy. If you do this all day, you'd have quite a workout for your muscles. Oh wow, and there you have it, some water. And I tell you what, after doing all that, you really deserve a cup of tea.
And as it turns out, Jingting produces its own distinct brew, a refreshing type of green tea.
Wow. So this is actually the local specialty tea of Jingting Mountain, and it used to be gifted to the Ming and Qing dynasty emperors. Now, this is called green snow tea because if you look closely at the leaves, there are flecks of white on it. And this tea is known for being light and fragrant, and this pleasant aftertaste lingers on long after you sip and enjoy it. So we've just about wrapped up our journey through Xuancheng, and I've realized that this is a city that really deserves closer inspection. On the surface, it's tranquil, it's enjoyable, and it's pleasant. But if you look deeper, you'll realize that this is a place that has profound cultural heritage. It's a place of pilgrimage for poets, and kind of like Wordsworth's Lake Windermere. And I think in the future, many more brilliant and creative minds will continue to come here from all over China seeking that special inspiration. And perhaps you should try it yourself one day too. This has been Travelogue, and I'm Katrina Yu. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.